All right, everyone, let's get going with Unit 3, which is Latin America, Learning Target 1. And our essential question is, how do the physical features of Latin America affect human settlement patterns? So we're going to be taking a look at the physical geography of Latin America. First thing we're going to talk about is how geographers break Latin America into regions. Latin America is huge, but they break it into a few regions. And the first one is right here is Middle America, and that includes Mexico and Central America. So Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, all of those countries would be considered Middle America. The Caribbean, sometimes we call it the West Indies. It's basically all of these islands in the Caribbean. So Haiti, the Bahamas, Cuba, Jamaica, and all of those countries. And then the last region is South America, and that's just the entire continent. So that's the first thing. The second thing we're going to look at is the waterways. Because remember, the physical features, there are 4. Waterways, landforms, climate, and natural resources. So let's take a look at waterways. First thing we're going to talk about are rivers. The Amazon River is the largest river system in South America. It's the longest river, and this is not a good map to show this, but it has hundreds of smaller rivers that join it. And in some areas, it's large enough to carry ships, kind of like the Mississippi River, where you can put barges and stuff down it. They can carry goods in and out of the Amazon River. The next river is the Rio Grande, and it makes up the border between Mexico and Texas, and you can see it actually goes up into New Mexico and into Colorado. Our next river, actually, let's back up. Let's do a vocabulary word here. And our vocabulary word is estuary. And an estuary is a body of water that is formed where fresh water from a river meets and mixes with salt water from the ocean or the sea. So let's take a look here. The estuary we're going to talk about is the Rio de la Plata, and it's the second largest river system in Latin America. So a river system is where you have more than one river coming together. And so here, this area right in here, where the rivers meet the ocean water, that's an estuary. And there are 3 rivers that are part of the Rio de la Plata, and the first one is the Paraguay River, and it drains the eastern half of South America. So you can see here that the Paraguay River is here, and then it goes into the Rio de la Plata. The second river is the Paraná River, which actually starts over here and moves this way. It's the second largest river in South America. The third one here is the Uruguay River, which is also part of the Rio de la Plata, and it's an important source of hydroelectric power. And hydroelectric power is energy that's created by the flow of water. And that would include a dam, and here's a little graphic for that. All right, our next waterways are lakes, and we're going to talk about 3 lakes. The first one is Lake Titicaca, which is the highest navigable lake, and navigable means that you can have ships on it. And it's the highest because it's the highest elevation. It's in the Andes Mountains, and it's right here on the border between Peru and Bolivia. Our second river is Lake Maracaibo, which is in Venezuela. And it's South America's largest lake, and technically it's not really a lake, it's an inlet of the Caribbean Sea, so that you can see the Caribbean Sea here, and it's not really closed off, it's just an inlet. And our third one is Lake Nicaragua, which is Central America's largest lake, and right here it's in Nicaragua, and it borders Costa Rica as well. All right, we also want to talk about the oceans and seas, which I didn't put on here, but we have, let's see if we can back up and see any of these. On the east coast, and we have the Pacific Ocean on the west coast. We also have the Gulf of Mexico, which is right here, which you guys knew that from last unit, and the Caribbean Sea, which is over here. Okay, let's move forward then to landforms. And feel free to stop in any of these and pause it to write it down. Let's start with mountains. The first mountain system we're going to talk about is the Sierra Madre, and it's in Mexico, and there's three. So we have the Oriental over here. Oriental means eastern. We have the Occidental, which is the western, and then they meet together down here to make the Sierra Madre del Sur, which is south. We have the Central Highlands, which is next, which is a chain of volcanic mountains in Central America and the Caribbean. This is a map. These are all where volcanoes have erupted. So you can see that it creates the highlands, and that's how most of the islands in the Caribbean have been formed. Then we have the Andes Mountains, which is actually made up of cordilleras, and it circles the Altiplano, which we'll see in a minute. So we have a vocab word here. A cordillera is they're mountain ranges that run parallel to each other. So you can see here that here's one mountain range, here's another, so they all run parallel to each other. And an altiplano just means high plain. And you can see here that these are the Andes Mountains, but there's the western, we have eastern, and then in the middle, it's a plain, it's flat, and it's fertile, but it has a very high elevation. All right, plateaus of Latin America. We have the Mexican Plateau, which is in Mexico, and it's very densely populated. It has a very mild climate. It has very fertile volcanic soil, and they have lots of rainfall, so that's where a lot of people live. Let's see. The Mato Grosso Plateau. It's a sparsely populated area in Brazil, which sparsely means that there's not a lot of people there. And we also have the Brazilian Highlands, which is on the east coast of Brazil. And it creates an escarpment on the eastern edge, and that's another vocabulary word. And an escarpment is a steep cliff or slope. So basically it's high elevation and then it just drops off into the ocean. Let's look at the plains and lowlands of Latin America. Our first one here is Brazil's coastal plain. So it's a plain that's on the coast, and in this case it's on the east coast because that's where Brazil is. And most of the people in Brazil have settled on the Brazilian coastal plain. You can see this is a population density map. So the coastal plain is all along the coast, and that's where all of the people live. So remember the Amazon's in there, and it's hard to live in the rainforest. Our next one here, plains, are the Llanos. It's in Colombia and Venezuela. You can see from this map here. It's really good for grazing cattle, so it's very fertile land. There's lots of grasses for cattle. And they employ llaneros, which are cowboys that are found in Venezuela and Colombia. And our other vocab word here is gaucho, which is another word for, or term for cowboys. But the gauchos are found in Argentina and Uruguay. And they are found in the pampas of Argentina and Uruguay. Pampas is right here again, very fertile. Lots of grasses. It's called the breadbasket of South America, so that's where a lot of their crops are grown. All right, let's look at climate. The third physical feature. We're going to talk about the tropical climate. So the first one is the tropical rainforest, and it's this green area on here. It covers about a third of South America, and so not a lot of people live here because it's hard to live in the rainforest. And a vocabulary word here is a canopy. The canopy is a continuous layer of leaves that are formed by the trees in a rainforest. So it's very dense, and it covers everything that's underneath it. It shelters, the one in South America shelters more species of plants and animals per square mile than anywhere else in the world. Another tropical climate is tropical savanna. It's this yellow area here, and it's very hot. There's lots of rainfall. It's tropical, but there is a long dry season, and there's lots of grasses. So the pampas, remember, are down here, so there's going to be lots of grasses here. And the last tropical climate are the humid subtropics. You can see here that this is down here, and also you'll see that it's the same as our American South. So they have short, mild winters, they have long, hot summers, they have short, dry periods, and also short grasses for grazing. Then we have our drier climates. We're going to look at the desert climate, and we're going to look at the Atacama Desert first. It's right over here, and it's actually caused from the rain shadow effect of the Andes Mountains. So this is a good graphic. The rain shadow effect it happens because the clouds and the rain cannot get over top of the mountains. The Andes Mountains are too tall. So you get all of the moisture coming off of the ocean. It goes up, it cools, and condenses, and so then it rains. So this side of the mountain has lots of rain, and then it goes, all of it leaves before it gets over the mountains, and then you have this really dry area, and that's where a desert forms, and that's the rain shadow effect. And then our last dry climate is the steppe climate. And you can see there's some in Mexico and then also in South America. But they have very hot summers, they have cool winters, and then it's grassy or lightly forested. And the last climate we're going to talk about are the vertical climates. Excuse me. Vertical climates happen based on your altitude. So the higher up you go, the colder it is. And we're actually only going to look at 3 because in Central and South America, it doesn't get up higher than that. So the first one is Tierra Caliente, which means hot land, and it is between sea level and 2,500 feet. A lot of that is where the tropical rainforest is, so it is very hot, but you can grow crops like bananas, sugarcane, rice, and then you can have some livestock. Our next climate, or vertical climate zone, is the Tierra Templada, which is the temperate land, so it's average, it's moderate. This is where we have the largest amount of people living because it's not too hot and it's not too cold. You have lots of sheep, cattle, dairy, farmers, vegetables, coffee, corn. And then our last one that we're going to talk about this time is Tierra Fria, which is cold land, and it is the highest one in Central and South America. It's between 6,000 and 12,000 feet above sea level, and you get frost during the winter months, so they grow crops like barley, potatoes, they have grazing cattle. Anything above that gets where you don't have any more trees and you get snow. Alright, now let's look at the natural resources, and this is our last physical feature we're going to look at. Oil. Venezuela is a major producer of oil. A lot of the world's oil comes from Venezuela. Gas prices are very cheap in Venezuela. You can also find natural gas along the Gulf of Mexico and the southern Caribbean. So remember last unit we talked about that there was the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico because there is lots of oil and natural gas there. We also have lots of mineral deposits. This is a good map. But you can find gold in Venezuela and Brazil. You can find silver in Peru and Mexico. You can find emeralds in Colombia. You can find copper in Chile. Bauxite is a mineral you can find in Jamaica. And bauxite, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's the main ore of aluminum. So it's used in anything that aluminum is made from. And then you can find tin in Bolivia and Brazil. So if you needed to do the notes, if you were a novice, go ahead and process your notes and write the summary and show them to me. Otherwise, you can get started on your practice activity. Adios.